Welcome, everyone. We will be waiting 2 to 3 minutes to get started as a courtesy to those who are still in the middle of connecting. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. Before we dive into the topic today, I have a few reminders. Please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the IM window. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. We've had a large number of people register for this webinar. We're thrilled to see such interest, but it means it may not be possible to answer every single question in real time. We will do our best to get it to as many as we can, and we have several dedicated people standing by just to answer your questions, but I wanted to provide an additional mechanism to ensure everyone's questions get answered. If you'll visit aka.ms/MCAS-Q&A, you'll see a post dedicated to webinar questions, and all these links that I'm referencing here, I pasted in the window if you need to copy them. We'll be reviewing the question transcript after this webinar, and we'll post further questions there. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's a great place to ask a question also. So feel free to reply to that post with any questions you have. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/MCAS-recordings. While you're there, please join our community by visiting aka.ms/security-community. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, requesting features, giving feedback, reviewing our product roadmaps, attending in-person events, or joining webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them, so please join us. We have a great topic today. This is part 3 of a 6-part webinar series on Microsoft Cloud App Security, or MCAS for short. Throughout the series, we'll be walking you through all the major pillars of functionality, showing you how to deploy and configure each part. Today's focus will be on monitoring and controlling user actions across your cloud apps using Conditional Access App Control. Our presenter and MCAS expert is Banu Jafarli. She's a program manager on our MCAS team and part of our Get to Production group. The focus of her role is to help our customers deploy and configure MCAS, so she has deep expertise in this topic. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to her. Banu?
Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Banu, and I am a PM on our Cloud and AI GTP engineering team. So as Ryan mentioned, today's focus is going to be around Conditional Access App Control. Before I get started, for the people that haven't joined our sessions in the past, I just want to briefly describe what a Cloud App Security Broker is and what it does. So every Cloud App Security Broker has four ways you can access it. The first way is your corporate HQ. These are when your workers are coming into your corporate office. Then you have public and home Wi-Fi when they're working from home or from a coffee shop. You have your external users who are your partners or your contractors that might have access to your environment. And of course, you have your users logging in from unmanaged devices. The first thing we want to do is discover which applications are being used in your network and understand who the users are, what the incoming and outgoing traffic is for these applications. The next thing we want to do is assess whether or not these applications meet your compliance, legal, and security parameters and how risky they are. And once you understand what the application is, the traffic and the risk level associated with them, you can decide whether or not you want to sanction or unsanction these applications, meaning you want to allow these applications for use or not allow them for them to use within your organization. The next thing to do is to govern these discovered applications, which can be done by connecting them via API and onboarding them, or onboarding through Azure AD, Active Directory, and federating them through single sign-on. Or you can choose to block these applications overall. The next thing to do is once you've decided how you want to deal with your unsanctioned applications, we'll be focusing on your sanctioned applications. And we want to take a look at your files, decide how you want to classify, label, and protect sensitive information. And we actually had a session specifically focused around our integration with Azure Information Protection and how you can protect the data within your environment. So you can actually go and look at the recording. However, today's session is mainly going to be focused around controlling and monitoring your user sessions in real time. And just to mention, cloud threats are still there. Microsoft Cloud Security helps you detect cloud threats, see if there's a compromised account, data exfiltration, identify and mitigate malware activities, as well as any other risk associated. And we had a session on this last week that was also recorded. So if you'd like to learn more about how to protect your data or more about cloud threats, feel free to watch our recorded sessions. But today's session is mainly going to be about how to control and monitor your user sessions in real time. Okay, so what is conditional access? Conditional access allows you to restrict certain actions based on the conditions of the user, the device, the location, and any cloud app or authentication method they use. You pretty much assess the conditions of your user. Is it an employee? Is it a partner? Look at their device. Is it a compliant device? Is it not? And then you assess the session risk. So pretty much you define what you find risky when you create a policy, which specific conditions are risky for you. For example, if you have a user logging in from an unmanaged device, that might be a high risk session for you. And that's something you want to monitor. Once you decide which conditions are risky for you and you enforce the appropriate policies in place, we're able to assess the session risk and then take the appropriate controls or the actions of what to do. You can choose to allow or block specific activities or force a password reset or require MFA when you have a user logging in from an unfamiliar location and you want to make sure that it's the appropriate user that's logging in. Or you can limit access, which is what we usually recommend. This way you let the user in You're allowing the user to be productive wherever, whenever they are. However, you're still protecting your corporate access. So you can allow the user, for example, to view a file if they're logging in from an unmanaged device, but not allow them to download it. And again, this is available not just on Microsoft apps, this is available on on-premises apps and any application that has single sign-on enabled as well. And we'll walk through what you can do throughout the demo with Conditional Access App Control and how you can monitor your user sessions in real time. So Conditional Access App Control for MCAS was built on top of Azure AD. So it's a very simple deployment process. So you would go into Azure Active Directory, go into Conditional Access, and create a policy the way you normally would in Azure AD. You would choose your users, your applications, any conditions, and when it comes to the access control, the only thing that's different is you would choose to use Conditional Access App Control. However, you would click on Use Custom Controls. And here you're rerouting your sessions to Microsoft Cloud App Security, and you're customizing your policies there of how you want these sessions to be monitored and which controls you want to enforce. After you create your policy, this is how the user experience would look like. Let's just say in this specific case, we had a user logging into SharePoint and we wanted to block the download of a file that had a sensitive information type. We were able to do this. And we support this functionality again on Microsoft apps, as well as third-party applications. And now we support it on on-premise apps as well. So here I have a sample use case of what the user experience would be like. So we're talking about preventing downloads of files. So we have a user, as you can see here, it's a compliant user, everything checks off. However, the device they're logging in from is unmanaged, which overall the session risk is a medium. So when the user logs on to a third-party app blocks, they get federated through Azure AD, and we see the user is compliant, so we allow the user to go through. So we allow the user to view the file because they're compliant. However, with our integration with Azure AD, and our integration with Azure Information Protection, we're protecting the file on download. So because the user is compliant, we're allowing them to view the file. However, when they try to download the file, it gets protected because it's getting downloaded on unmanaged device. The medium risk session, again, the user will view the file and the file will get protected on download specifically because the condition is risky due to the fact that it's an unmanaged device and the control we're choosing to take is protecting the file on download. Here we have a few things happening in this use case. We mentioned earlier that Cloud App Security is integrated with Azure Active Directory. It's integrated with Azure Information Protection as well as Intune. And all these integrations actually work together to give you an overall protection on what's happening within your user sessions. So in this use case, we have a user logging into Box. The user is redirected through Azure AD to check the session risks and get authenticated using single sign-on. If we see that everything works properly, there's no risk session, everything is good, the user is able to log into Box. However, if the session seems risky, they get redirected to Microsoft Cloud App Security, and this is where we analyze the session risk. The first thing we can do is check the device to see if it's compliant with Intune. Then we can check the user behavior because we're using behavior analytics to see what the user's normal day-to-day activities are. We can check the user's org to see is it an internal user or an external user or a partner, as well as checking the locations. Once we analyze the session risk, we check to see if there's any relevant policies that have been created with Box and take those actions. So for example, if the device was on managed, we will protect those files on download with the integration with AIP. If we notice that the user's behavior is something suspicious or they're doing something they haven't done before, we monitor and alert those actions as well. We check their user organization, and when we do, we see it's a partner, for example, it's a business-to-business user, we enforce read-only to make sure the appropriate control is taking place. And again, we require MFA if the user is logging in from an unfamiliar location to make sure it's actually that user. So just to go over this one more time, we're assessing the session risk when it seems risky through Cloud App Security and enforcing the appropriate policies. So throughout this demonstration, I'm going to talk to you guys about 6 use cases. And the first use case we're going to walk through is how to either block, monitor, or protect files with SharePoint Online. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go to the Azure portal. I'm going to go to Azure Active Directory. Then I'm going to click on Conditional Access and create a policy the way I normally would. In this case, I'll call it CAS policy. And then I get to pick, do I want to apply this to all the users in the organization or select users and groups and decide that. So in this case, I'll just say all users for this example. And I would select my cloud applications. So for this example, I'm going to do SharePoint. And then after that, I'm going to go to my session, choose Use Conditional Access App Control. I can have 3 options here: monitor only, block downloads, or use custom policy. But because we want these sessions to be monitored through Cloud App Security, we're going to use custom policies and create these policies in MCAS. So I would select and go ahead and create my policy. I've already created this policy, but just to mention, whenever you select a specific application to be used as a conditional access app control app, you need to make sure to sign in and sign out of that application for it to get triggered in MCAS. So if I go to Microsoft Cloud App Security, I go to my gear and click on my conditional access app control apps. I see various applications listed here, and we've added various apps already for the demo. Due to the interest of time that we'll be going through to show you various use cases. But if I go to the second page, you can see here that SharePoint is connected as a conditional access app control app. So as I mentioned, our first use case is to block, monitor, or protect files with SharePoint Online. So we're going to go to our policies. And for conditional access app control apps, there's 2 types of policies you can create. You can create access policies for mobile and desktop and session policies for browser. So in this case, we're going to create a session policy. So we're going to go ahead and choose a template. I'm going to do block download based on real-time content inspection. I'm going to choose my application, which is going to be SharePoint. I'm also going to choose my user, who happens to be Sylvia. That's our test user. And then if I wanted to scope this policy down further, I can do it by classification label, extension, file name, or file size. And then since we're looking for sensitive information types, we're going to use our data classification service, choose our inspection type, sensitive information type, and in this case, we're going to block the download of a social security. Okay, so there's 3 actions you can take when creating this policy. In this case, we're going to block it. However, you can choose to monitor all activities, block them and monitor all activities, which is a capability you natively get as a conditional access using conditional access for SharePoint. But with the integration with MCAS, you can actually also choose to protect files on download instead by adding an Azure Information Protection Classification label. But in this case, we're going to choose block. So I've already went ahead and created this policy. So I'm going to walk you through the user experience Sylvia will have in the case she tries to download a file that has a social security number in it. So these are all the applications that Sylvia has been federated through using single sign-in with Azure AD. And we'll go ahead and click on SharePoint. And right away, the user is getting notified that their session is being monitored. So if we go to continue, we'll go to the documents. And we have a file here called employee SSN information. And we're going to go ahead and try to download this file. And when we try to download this file, it gets blocked right away. So something else I want to show you, since we're already here, is if we chose to protect, if we create a policy choosing to protect a file, we'll get the capability to actually view that file. So here we have a file, we can view it. But if I go back and try to download this file, the file gets downloaded, but you can see here, because I'm not signed in and I don't have permissions to this account as Banu Jafarli, I'm not able to view this file. So this is where the integration with Azure Information Protection comes into play. If we were to create a policy where we chose to protect rather than block, we would be able to view the file, but when it gets downloaded, unless we have the right permissions, we cannot view it. So now we're going to go back to MCAS and actually go into the activity log and see what it shows us. Okay, so just going to refresh this really quick. Okay, so we do see that Sylvia using single sign-on logged into SharePoint, but it's going to take a bit. We'll come back and we'll see that the file was blocked and protected for both of the use cases. So next we'll walk through our next use case, which is similar to our first one, where we're blocking download of sensitive content with third-party apps. In this case, we're going to look at Amazon Web Services and Workplace by Facebook. So it's very similar to the first policy we created. The only difference is we're looking at third-party applications in this case. So we would go back to our policies. We would create a session policy again, because this is in the browser. And we can use the template and do block download based on real-time content inspection. We choose our applications, AWS, and then we're going to do Workplace by Facebook. And you can see both applications have been selected. And then we're going to use our test user again, who happens to be Sylvia. And then again, we're going to use our inspection method, which is the data classification service, choose sensitive information type, and look for social security numbers when we do the real-time content inspection. And then we would create this policy. Again, I've already went ahead and created this policy. So if I go back to Sylvia's account, I click on Amazon Web Services. I get redirected again. I'm being notified that my sessions are getting monitored. And as you can see here, MCAS Test 9, and it's an Azure Active Directory login. We can continue to Amazon Web Services. Here we have our storage, so we're going to click on the S3. And we have our DLP demo bucket. We're going to click on our files. And we have an unclassified file with a social security number. So I'm going to click on the file and try to download it. And again, when I try to download this file, it's the same experience that we had in SharePoint. It gets blocked away instantly and gives you real-time control of your user sessions in a third-party application. Now I'm going to try the same thing using Workplace by Facebook. So again, once again, I'm notified that my session is being monitored. I'm going to choose continue. I see that it's an Azure Active Directory login. I'm logging in from MCAS test 9. It's our CAS tenant name. Continue to Workplace by Facebook. I'm going to just click on our general page. And here I have a file that contains an employee social security number, and I'm going to go ahead and try to download it. And once again, it's the same experience for the user. Their download gets blocked. So if we go to MCAS now and go back to the activity log, it should have loaded now. Okay, so right now we see a couple of things. Just when I showed you my SharePoint demo, you can see that the two things happened. The original file that we downloaded that had an employee social security number, you get notified that it's been blocked in your activity log. And then the file that was protected using Azure Information Protection on download instead, you can see the logo right here. It was protected with Azure Information Protection. The file that we just downloaded for Amazon Web Services, you can see the file was downloaded. And protected by Azure Information Protection instead, which application did this use case take place. You get all this visibility here as well. So the next use case we're going to look into is actually blocking sharing with Box. So we're going to go back to our policy page and create a session policy. And you can pick your session control type. So, but the first thing I'm going to do is name the policy. So block sharing with Box. And here I got multiple options again to monitor block activities, control file download or file upload. In this case, we're going to do block activities. We're going to select our application, which is Box. We're going to select our activity, which is share. So sharing any Box file. And once again, we're going to scope this down to Sylvia because she happens to be our test user. Okay, so I picked my application, what the activity type is, who my user is, any device that's not compliant or domain joined. I can choose to narrow this down further by choosing the content inspection. And then again, I can, in my actions, I can just choose to monitor or block. So again, I'm going to block sharing in Box, and then I would create this policy. And it's been created, so I'm going to go back to Sylvia's account. We're going to click on Box. We're going to get redirected to Box, get notified that our session is being monitored again. I'm just going to click on a file that has PII data and try to share it. And right away, this action is blocked. So the user is not able to share their data externally. You can, this way you're making sure within Box, there's no data exfiltration and everything stays within Box itself. So if we went back to our activity log, we should see that this action took place. Okay, so this is taking a bit to load, so we'll come back here. But just quickly to sum up what we did in these three use cases, the first one, We looked at how you can block, monitor, protect files with SharePoint Online, which is a first-party application. In our second use case, we looked at how to block downloads of sensitive content with third-party apps, such as AWS and Workplace by Facebook. So we're showing you here that we do support any application that has single sign-on enabled. And our third use case was blocking specific activities. In this case, we were blocking sharing with Box. So the next use case we're going to actually look into is blocking the upload of files, and I'm going to do this with another user. So here we have Adele. So again, I'm going to go into my policies. I'm going to create a policy, session policy, and I can use the template and do block upload based on real-time content inspection. Again, I have my devices. I'm choosing to do APITS compliant or domain join. I'm selecting my application. In this case, I'm going to select OneDrive. And once again, if I wanted to add an additional filter to this policy, such as a classification label or an extension or a file name, I can do so. In this case, I'll do an extension and do doc and docx. Data classification service, I'm going to choose a sensitive information type. And block uploads that contain social security numbers. I'm choosing to block again, and I've created this policy. So if I go into Adele's account, these are all the applications she has access to. In this case, I'm going to click on OneDrive. And I'm getting notified that Adele session is being monitored in OneDrive, so I'm going to continue. And before I get started, this is the file I'm going to upload. As you can see, it has the format of a social security number, and it's called SSN MCAS. So I'm going to click on Upload, Files. I'm going to upload this file that clearly contains something that looks like a social security number. And right away, the upload is blocked. Two things are happening here. We're choosing to block uploads. It's doing a real-time content inspection with the data classification service. It's identifying that there's a social security number and blocking upload for this user. So the next use case we're going to look at is block copying within a file. So we're going to create another policy. It's going to be a session policy, and this time we're going to do it with a third-party application, which is Box. So we can choose to use the template. Again, we have a template here for block copy/paste using a real-time content inspection. So I'm going to use the template. I'm going to select my application, which is going to be Box. And here I have cut, copy, or paste item. And I can choose to use the content inspection type or not, and then go ahead and block anytime there is a cut, copy, or paste within Box real time. So I'm going to show you what that experience looks like. So once again, we're using Adele's account. I'm going to click on Box. Access is Box being monitored again. So here we have a file with employee social security numbers. Obviously, we don't want your employees to going ahead and copying this information if like the download is blocked. So here, if I try to copy, let's just say one line, it gets blocked. Even if I try to copy the entire thing, it gets blocked again. So this way, if you forget to create a policy to block download, but the users have read-only access, you can make sure they can copy files, they can download sensitive files, and they can share sensitive files. You get the capability to block various actions anytime there is a sensitive information type and the session is high risk. Who the user was, the application, all the visibility that you need. And you can see the copy item was also blocked as well. And here we have our next use case, which is any app, any condition. This is currently in private preview. So if you're interested in this, we can put the link in the chat window and show you how to sign up for this right now. This is something we did where you can use Conditional Access App Control using any application, any condition. In this case, we're going to be downloading the files from an on-prem SharePoint site. There's an actual on-prem server that one of my coworkers has in his basement that has the SharePoint site on, and I'll show you what that user experience looks like. So in this case, I'm going to go back to Azure AD. So I'm going to go to the Azure portal first. Click on Azure Active Directory. Go to Conditional Access. Create a new policy the same way I normally would. I can name it on-prem SharePoint site. Choose my users and groups. So in this case, I'm going to use Adele's account. And then I'm going to choose my application. So if I already went ahead and onboarded this application to Azure AD, so I have a finance internal site. You can tell this is clearly a custom application, custom site that we're using. And then we choose our sessions. And in this case, again, we're going to click on Use Conditional Access App Control. However, we're going to try to block all downloads. In this case, we're not creating the custom policy. We're blocking all downloads that happen specifically within this on-prem SharePoint site that's on an actual on-prem server. I went ahead and created this policy already, so I'm going to go and show you what Adele's user experience is going to be. So here we have the finance internal site that we onboarded already on Azure AD. I'm going to click on it. Right away, you're notified that the access to finance on-prem is being monitored. So the same user experience you would get with any normal application, you're getting this user experience with this custom SharePoint site as well. So it's the same user experience. Right away, you're getting notified that it's being monitored. So we're going to continue. And here I have a list of different files. And if you remember, we chose to block all downloads on the SharePoint site. So every file I'm going to click on right now, the download is going to get blocked. So if I have credit card numbers, I'm going to click on download a copy. The download is blocked. Now, I'm going to click on password protected file. Try to download this. again, this download is blocked. So as you can see here, because we chose to block all downloads for this specific policy for this on-prem SharePoint site, this is giving you the ability to block any types of sites on any applications. This is in private preview, and we're blocking all types of downloads. So to sum up, once again, we went through 6 different use cases. Our first one was able to block, monitor, and protect files with SharePoint Online. Our second use case was blocking download sensitive content with third-party apps. This is to show you that any application that can be onboarded using single sign-on, such as AWS and Workplace by Facebook. Those are the 2 we went over. We block sharing with Box, so you can block specific activities for specific applications. We blocked upload of files based on the extension. You can also do this with a classification label. Whenever we went over blocking the copying within a file, you can also block pasting and printing as well. And this is currently private preview, any application, any condition. And we did downloading of files from an on-prem SharePoint site, which is our Any app. This concludes my demo and my presentation, so I'm going to stop sharing. Are there any questions, Ryan, that you want to call out?
Yeah, we've got one here. Is the on-prem SharePoint site connected to AAD via AD Connect?
I think Alex, who we have on the line, can answer this question.
Looks like he's...
Hey, PJ. So I did not do this configuration myself. That's a very likely route that they would have gone, though. So yes, AD Connect will work with this flow. If you're using ADFS to manage identities of users and then syncing the user information back to AD Connect, that's definitely an option.
Great. Would it be possible to identify which conditional access policy and CA's policy blocking the access for an end user?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, you can go into your match policies and see what's being blocked specifically when you go to your alerts or your activity logs.
Okay, great. Is the detection of the copy based on the field name or on document permissions?
I think since this is in preview, Alex, can you answer this question? This is his feature specifically.
I don't see the question. What was the question?
They were asking if it was from Bruce, if the detection is based off of the field name or off of document permissions.
Which detection?
Let me see here. It was that was a follow-on from another one. Identification of the SSN. So I think it was blocking based on SSN match.
Yeah, so that we're actually just looking at plain text. It doesn't have anything to do with the document. So everything related to copy, cut, and paste is related to plain text inside of any application.
Got it. Okay, for extension blocking, is it possible to block some EXEs, such as bad ones, but not other ones that are known good ones?
Can we post this question in the tech community so we can look further into this? You can select which extension type specifically you can block. You can continue to add them.
Sure, and the way you would do that if you're looking for our tech community that's the link aka.ms/security.
Let me add a couple words there too. So blocking files with known malware reputations is something that we're looking at now that we've got the upload capabilities in the product. It's not something that we do today, so there's no reputation-based block upload. So you could do something like block EXEs, but you can't do something like decide which reputations and which ones you block specifically.
Thank you, Alex. Is there any way to make a conditional access policy site-specific instead of all SPOs or all of on-prem?
Right, so that's what we did, where we picked a specific finance SharePoint site within the demo.
Okay, great.
And Dan, that feature is actually just rolling into private preview as of today. So if you'd like to enroll into that, basically being able to create download policies at the site level or at the folder level in SharePoint and OneDrive, just ping me. I'll leave my email. in this thread, and we can go from there.
Previous answer says that this is only for apps that are being accessed through the web browser. Are there any apps that support any of these controls via the native mobile apps, or do you only get monitoring when you use the native/mobile apps?
So that's what I talked about, how session policies are for the browser and access policies are for mobile and desktop applications.
From a technical perspective on that one, there are applications that you would be able to apply this policy to because they happen to use a browser. They're basically just an application that looks like it's an application and really it's a browser. Some applications configure things very differently from others. So the sort of business decision we made is we're not going to get into the game of choosing which mobile apps, which client apps we suffix and which we don't. Instead, we're going to do exactly what Banu said, of create a filter that identifies if it's a mobile app or a browser app or a client app, and then block those and then route users to the browser instead.
Okay, we have someone who's saying they're confused about licensing. What are the options for MCAS licensing?
E5 or standalone MCAS? Standalone MCAS licensing.
Okay, great. Thanks. This one's more of a comment. The solution set has come a long way in a short period of time. Great. Thank you, PJ. We're happy to hear that. I'm going to give a couple more minutes for additional questions here. I'm going to post some links while we're waiting for those to roll in. For those who don't have the rest of the series for some reason, you can get it here, aka.ms/MCAS webinar. We always get lots of questions about where to get the recordings. You can find those here, aka.ms/MCAS recordings. And if you have not joined our AIP webinar series, Azure Information Protection, you should check that out as well. There's a lot of overlap between the products and related functionality, and so go to aka.ms AIP webinar series. And I gave the community link a moment ago, so you've got that there. And then the Q&A overflow, if we somehow missed your question here, is aka.ms/MCAS Q&A. All right, we've got a few new questions here. Azure Active Directory P1, that includes MCAS, correct?
So let me address that one. To do the conditional access app control policies that Banu showed here today, you need an MCAS license. So either the standalone or EMS-E5 SKU, like she mentioned, to be able to click that button in conditional access in Azure AD to invoke those features, you need an Azure AD P1 license. So basically, to use this feature, you need Azure AD P1 plus an MCAS license.
Okay, great. We've got a comment. Chrome doesn't work well when you use MCAS. Do you have any detail on that?
I saw Alex commented on that one. He said there's a plugin for Chrome.
No, I think this is a different comment.
Oh,
This is a new one, and I need a lot more detail than just that. Chrome is actually, Chrome and Edge have both worked fantastically for every demo and every feature I've ever built into this thing. So I'd love to understand where it's breaking and make sure we address that.
And just to add on to it, my first demo that was done with Sylvia was done on Chrome, so everything worked properly. And my second demo was done on Edge, just so you guys can see that the experience is exactly the same on both of the browsers as well.
Yeah, and so this is exactly a case where it'd probably be easier to get help through our community, because you can post some screenshots of the errors you're running into and give a bunch more detail. So give that a try. Is there any way to stop the choose what to do with this file if it's being blocked from showing up on the bottom of the screen?
Can you add more information exactly what you're trying to do?
I think the comment there is about the tombstone file that gets generated anonymous.
Oh, okay,
Stop me if I'm wrong. Since we're actually invoking a download, when we select that download button, we do have to download some file, and that's the reason that we create that dummy or that tombstone file instead. So there will be a dummy file. It will have nothing to do with the original content of the file, other than providing basically the rationale for why we blocked it.
Yeah, it's just a text file explaining. It's important to understand that that is not a, you can't bypass that control just by clicking Save As or anything like that. For sensitive information detection, is it possible to detect information that was formatted with symbols or font type that can be human readable format? Is it also possible to detect information hidden using steganography techniques? So I think they're referring to general obfuscation there. Does that break that functionality?
So this is more related to the data classification service that Microsoft overall uses. I think I'm not 100% sure, but this is something we can definitely look into. But if you just search the way the data classification service works in general, I mean, I think you can find the answer to this. I'm honestly not familiar with the steganography techniques being used for this.
Okay. How can someone reach out to us for an issue that they're facing?
Again, to tech community.
Yeah, so that's the aka.ms/security community, or you can always raise a support ticket, of course. Do these blocking features work if the user is using local sync agents, Box, SharePoint, and OneDrive rather than in browser?
So I think this is the port, Alex, tell me if I'm wrong. This is the portion that's in private preview, where you can do it with any application.
No, I think this question is slightly different. So there's a feature to sync files that you start working on locally and sync them to OneDrive or SharePoint. You would actually have to turn that sync off. That sync happens server to server and has nothing to do with the browser, which is where these controls take shape. So by virtue of that, these controls don't have any visibility into those privileged server to server calls.
Okay. What determines when to use MCAS over other security services, for example, DLP, AIP, conditional access in general, in Office 365, besides the capabilities to monitor third-party applications?
I think with MCAS and AIP, for example, with AIP, you get classification and labeling on-prem, but with MCAS, you get the automatic classification and labeling in the cloud right away. So
Yeah,
really,
that's a great start. Let me take it one step further, Alex. So this is a proxy, and by virtue of being a proxy, it adds a little bit of latency to the session. It's not much, and we've done a bunch of work to optimize that, and I'm actually pretty damn proud of the way this thing works. But at its core, if a service builds in conditional access policies natively that do what you need to do, then that by all means definitely use those. So in the case of SharePoint or Exchange Online, they've built some conditional access policies in that work natively. Those are fantastic, and if they satisfy your use cases, then use them. Where this product sort of comes in is anywhere where a service hasn't implemented your exact use case, like what Banu just said. In some cases, you want to do something more granular, like encrypt files or look for a specific attribute of a file that those native services don't do, or for any third-party application that hasn't implemented conditional access controls at all. That's where you would leverage this service.
Okay, great. Do we have a matrix with the differences between OCAS and MCAS spelled out anywhere?
yeah, we do. It's in the docs. It talks about what OCAS gives you, what MCAS gives you. I can find it quickly and put it in the chat.
In what regions are the MCAS proxies hosted?
I think they're mainly in the US and Europe.
So we have proxy nodes set up in Australia, US, Europe, and we can spin them up anywhere. So basically anywhere where there's an Azure data center and that map is publicly available online, we can spin up a proxy node to make sure that A, it stays in a specific geo, and B, that it's as close to you as possible to reduce the latency, like I was talking about the optimizations we've made.
Okay, great. So with that, I think we've answered all the questions that have come in that I can see. Banu, thank you for a fascinating presentation. Alex and Johan and everyone, thank you so much for answering questions. Thank you to all of you who joined us today, and thanks for being part of our community. We hope to see you next week for the rest of the series. Thank you.
Thank you.